Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to wrap up quarter 1 in terms of eyeshadows. I love doing these videos every quarter where I go through all the eyeshadows that I hit pan on and finished, so it's quite an exciting one. I love sharing just pans and empty shadows because it's such an accomplishment. I love watching it from other people, I love watching it or like sharing it with you guys, so I hope you guys are going to enjoy this one too. I do have quite an exciting update, both for pans and finished eyeshadows, especially considering only in the first quarter of the year. I usually feel like I finish up more shadows towards the end of the year, but I'm really happy with the progress that I have already so far. So I'm going to jump into the video, but before I do so, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. Alright, so we are starting off with eyeshadow pans that I hit, and I usually go through them in the order that I hit them, and I also let you know how many uses it took to hit pan on each shadow, as well as the average for the year, and same with the finished shadows. So we're going to start off with the first one, which is from my palette. This is a single shadow from Pastel Roses. It's this one right here called Starlight. So this one is a shadow that I used quite a lot in the beginning of the year. I've had a break from it now, but I did hit pan on this one. I used it a lot as an eyeshadow, but also on my nails, and it's actually one of my favorite eyeshadows. I really love this one, and as you can see, I do have a pan in that one now. And this one has taken me 29 uses to pan on. So quite a long time, but I do think because I used this as a nail polish, I used it quite evenly as well, which is why it took a little bit longer, but 29 uses for this shadow. Then we're moving on to a shadow that was in my panel's eyeshadows, and that one came from my Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette, and I was working on the shade Blissful, which is this shadow right here. So I was wanting to hit pan on this one. It's actually quite similar to the shadow that I'm wearing on my lids today, and I realized that when I was panning this one that they were basically dupes of each other. But it's a beautiful eyeshadow, and I really did enjoy my time with this one. And this one was definitely quicker than the Pastel shadow that I just talked about. This one took me 10 uses to pan on, so that is the pan right there. Then we are back to my palette again, and I hit pan on another single shadow in my BYOP, which is this one right here. This is from Glam Shop, and it's the shade Pale Kiscovy, something like that. I think it means moon dust, and this one I was able to pan on after 18 uses. I use this one mainly as a corner highlight, but also as a topper. And as you can see, I have expanded the pan a little bit as well. So this is one that I of course want to finish this year, same with the other shade from my palette. So we'll see how far I get. Hopefully you'll see these again later in the year in the finish category. But for now, I'm really happy that I hit pan on this one too. Shadow number 4 came from my Product Level Up, and Product Level Up level 1 palette for me was the Nude Light Obsessions from Huda Beauty. So in here I wanted to hit one pan and use every single shade once, and the pan that I hit was the third shade in the palette. They don't have any names, but it's this one right here. It's like a light pink shade, like a peachy pink shade. And this one was actually quite hard to pan on. I didn't expect it to take that long, but it is quite a firm pressed formula, and it's also like a crease shade for me, so I use quite a fluffy brush with it. So it did take a little bit longer, not, you know, extremely long or anything, but for me it did take a little bit longer time, and it took me 27 uses to pan on that shade. But yeah, this palette looks very well loved now, which I'm happy to see, and it was a beautiful shadow to work on, especially, you know, in January, February type of time of the year. The fifth pan that I hit this year was from my Pan Lab palette in order, which is where I tried to pan on all of my Colourpop shadows, not all my Colourpop shadows, but all my depotted Colourpop shadows that does not yet have pan. So the first one that I worked on this year in that project is the shade Ghostin, which is originally from the Lilac You A Lot palette. So I was working on this one to hit pan on, and of course, as you can see, I was able to do that. And this shadow took me 14 uses to hit pan on. It was again another really beautiful shade to work on early in the year. Even though it is more of a spring tone type of shade, but I did really enjoy it, and I made some really beautiful looks that were like pinky purpley kind of themed. Pan number 6 yet again comes from my Pan Lab palette, and that is this NYX Depotted Cream Shadow, which looks like this. This is originally from the In Your Element Air palette, and it's just like the beige cream shadow. It doesn't have any names, but I did use this one again quite a lot. I did use some of this to franken, so it was already a bit more shallow, but in this project or tract overall, I had 25 uses on it, so that's how long it took to pan on this one. one. Again, I use a bit of a fluffier brush with it, which I think is why it takes a little bit longer with these shades. But yeah, I definitely want to finish this one through this year. It is again in my Panda palette, and I don't think it's going to be any issues. So hopefully you can see this shadow again later in the year in the finished category. We are staying in my Panda palette, and we have a Colourpop shadow next. This is actually a pressed glitter, and this is originally from the Sweet Talk palette. It is the shade Prima Drama, and this one was very quick to pan on. It only took me 4 uses, but I think because it is a pressed glitter, it does go quite quickly. And also I think I already had quite a decent amount of use on this one. So this is of course another one that I want to finish, but for now I do have that pan, which is quite large, and 4 uses only to pan on it, which definitely draws down the average, but sometimes you have easier shades to pan on and sometimes you have harder ones. We have some more single shadows to talk about next, or at least one to talk about next, and that one comes from Terra Moons. This is the shade Lightspeed, which is one that I worked on in my Panda's eyeshadows. I believe I rolled this one in for a shadow starting with L or a yellow shimmer. I can't remember which one was which, but this is the shade Land on the Stars, which as you can see has a yellow base and then like a bluish purpley pink shift running through it. I believe I rolled in for yellow shimmer. Anyway, this one took me 10 uses to pan on, so not too long, but you know, a decent amount of time, especially for a shimmer, and I'm really happy to now see a pan in this shade. We then have a shadow from my current Product Level Up palette, so this is a little bit of a spoiler, but this is the Red Dragon palette from Odenside. So I'm currently working on this palette, and the shadow that I hit pan on in here is the shade Overheat, which is this one right here. So that one took me 12 uses to pan on, and you can see that pan right there. And again, this palette looking quite well loved now. I am of course gonna continue working on it because it is my Product Level Up palette, so you might see this one again soon, in, well not soon, but in the next installment of the series, because I do have the 2 pans in here for that goal. So I'm going to talk about this one again next quarter too, but for now I only have that 1 pan to share. And that one, by the way, was pan number 9 for the year. We have another Odenside palette next. This is the Snow Dreams palette, which I rolled into my deck of panning. And I actually wanted to use this one like Product Level Up style as well. So I wanted to hit 1 pan and use every single shade in here once. And the shadow I decided to go with to pan on is this one right here called Hugs. So that's the one that I focused on. And that specific shade took me 11 uses to pan on. So that is that one right there, and pan number 10 for the year. So we are back with another single shadow, and another one that is was in my Panda's eyeshadows. This is the other one that I can't remember if it was for L or for Yellow Matte this time, but I believe this is the one that I rolled in for starting with the letter L, and the other one I think was for the color prompt. But anyway, this is the shade Land on the Stars, which also comes from Terra Moon. So you can see there that I was able to hit a little pan there in the center. And that one took me 12 uses to pan on, and this shadow did actually shatter on me, so I did triple press it. So you can see that it's quite shallow in there, which is why I pan on it so quickly. I think it's only like half full, but it's a beautiful neon yellow type of shade. So I loved using this one both as like a transition shade, but also a lot in my inner corner, and it worked really nicely that way. Then we do have 2 more pans to go. The next one also comes from my Panda palette in order, and that shade is this one right here, which is the shade Frank, again from Colourpop of course, and this one was originally from the Give It To Me Straight palette. So this is just like a warm chocolatey type of brown, but again I worked on this one in my Panda palette in order, and this one also took me 14 uses to pan on, exactly the same as the shade Ghostin' I spoke about earlier, but yeah, good shade. It was very easy to incorporate because it was like an everyday type of shadow, and this is the second last pan to share, and it is pan number 12. And then the last pan that I have to share with you for the quarter is another one from our Panda palette. This is the shade Bismuth, which is also from the Pastel Roses. We're starting with a Pastel Roses shade and we're finishing with Pastel Roses shade. And this one was actually quite similar in uses as well to the first shade. This one took me 25 uses to pan on. The first shade Starlight that I talked about took 29, so slightly longer, but this one also took quite a long time. It is a beautiful, beautiful shifty shadow. It has like a blue base, as you can see, and you can see that purpley pink shift. And it also goes into like a yellowy green shift as well. It's very stunning. But yeah, 25 uses to pan on this one, and that is the last one I have to share with you, which means that I hit 13 pans in total in quarter 1 of the year. So overall, I'm very happy with that number. I think 13 is really, really good for the first 3 months of the year. That is just over 4 pans a month. And yeah, I'm happy with that, especially because I'm not really having like a very high hit pan goal for the year. I believe I do want to hit pan on 50 shades this year as like a loose goal, and that would mean that I'm on track because I have to hit 12.5 pan per quarter in order to be tracked for that, and I would be able to hit that because I hit 13, so I'm half a pan ahead, which is really good. And looking at all of those uses combined, so I did take all of the uses that I took to hit pan on these shadows, and then I've divided it by 13 because that's how many pans that I hit, and that gives me an average hit pan in Q1 that is 16.23 uses in order to hit pan, and that is overall like across all the pans that I hit in Q1. So that can kind of just give you an average of how long it takes me to pan on it, of course not taking into consideration formula, you know, matte shimmer, anything like that, but 16.23 uses. Then we are moving on to eyeshadows finished, and of course this list is going to be a little bit shorter because I don't finish as many eyeshadows as I hit pan on, but I'm still very excited to share with you the eyeshadows that I finished. So the first one we have to talk about is this one right here, which comes from the Huda Beauty Gold Obsessions palette. It was my Panda palette 2 years ago now, which is crazy, but I'm trying to slowly finish this one, and as you can see I only have one shade left in here, but I did work on one of these shades last year to finish, and it was this shade right here, so the 6th shade in the palette, and I didn't quite finish it in 2024, so I continued working on it in this quarter and I was able to finish it, and I have a total of 27 tracked uses on that shade, but also take into consideration that in 2024 I did not keep all my uses tracked in my spreadsheet, so it definitely took way longer to finish, but 27 is what I have tracked, so that is what I'm going to count, and that was the first shadow that I finished this quarter. Then the second shadow that I finished comes from my Panda palette again, but this is my Soft Glam palette. I am panning both this one and my BYOP this year, which is why I have two. But this is also one that I worked on last year, so it was my Panda palette last year, but I rolled it over this year to completely try to finish. And the shadow that I finished in here was the shade Sienna. It is right there. And this one, again, I do have my tracked uses from last year and this year, but anything that I used prior to 2024, I don't have tracked. But since this one was my Panda palette last year, all of the uses from last year's Panda palette was tracked luckily, so at least, you know, it's a little bit more accurate than the shade from the Huda Beauty palette. But this shadow took me 162 uses to finish up, so again, definitely higher and probably more of an accurate number. So 2 shadows in Q1 is already great, but I did actually finish up a 3rd shadow in Q1 of the year, which I'm so happy with, especially because it is so early in the year. And the 3rd shadow that I was able to finish this year is this one right here, which was such an accomplishment because I worked on this one for so long. If you followed along my project pan both last year as well as this year, you know that this one was such a beast to finish. And this one is my Rosewood shadow from Burberry. This is one of their sheer eyeshadows, and this one had a whopping 2.5 grams of shadow. I did already have pan on this one when I started working on it, but I did track all my uses last year as well as this year, so considering that I already have pan on it and all of these uses are like past hitting pan, this one took me 410 uses to finish up, which is an insane amount. But I am done. As you can see, the pan is completely empty, and yeah, very proud of this one, and it was such a nice one to work on. And even though it took a long time, I did use this one in my brow, and it was a really nice brow shade for me, so at least it was an easier one to reach for like every single day. If this was a color that I had to use on my eye exclusively, I don't know how many years it would take me to finish, because I can't really reach for the same eyeshadow every single day. It's just not something that I do. So if I couldn't use it in my brow, it would have taken me years and years, maybe even decades to finish. But those were all of the shadows that I was able to finish in Q1. So I'm really happy with 3. My goal is 20 for the year, which means I would have had to finish 5 to be on track. But I'm still fine with that. I think because again, I started with a lot of full shadows at the beginning of the year, or like quite full shadows. I tend to finish up more towards the end of the year, so starting off with 3 in Q1 I'm really pleased with. So let's look at the average. So with all of that combined, we have some that were like ridiculously long with its 410 uses, and then we have that Huda Beauty shade which was on 27, but I know it took longer than that, but that is what I am counting because that is what I have tracked for the last 2 years. So taking all of that into consideration, I was able to finish a shadow on average in 199.67 uses. So just under 200 uses. So that is gonna be it for all of my kind of update today. I'm really happy with both the pants and the eyeshadows that I finished. So yeah, let's see how they keep going for the year. Hopefully I can keep this trend going and I can be on track for majority of the year and finally hit my goals for both pan and finish shadows this year. That would be amazing if I can do that. But I hope you guys are having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.